locked away, a global crisis. The stark reality of our world's prison systems is a reflection of our collective conscience. Prisons, shrouded in secrecy, hold a mirror to society. They are not just buildings of confinement, but symbols of our deepest societal values and fears. They reflect our values, our fears, and our capacity for both compassion and cruelty. Within these walls, the human spirit is tested to its limits. Within the walls of the world's toughest prisons, human beings endure unimaginable suffering, often stripped of their dignity and hope. Overcrowding, violence, and neglect are rampant. This is a global crisis, demanding our attention and action. From the bustling cities to the remote corners of the world, the issue of prison reform is universal. From the overcrowded cells of South America to the isolation units of the United States, the toughest prisons represent the extreme end of punishment. They are places where hope is often a distant memory. They house individuals deemed the most dangerous, yet they often become breeding grounds for further despair and violence. The cycle of suffering continues unabated. This journey inside these institutions is not for the faint of heart, but it is a journey we must take to understand the true cost of our justice systems. It is a journey that challenges our perceptions and demands our empathy. By confronting the harsh realities of these prisons, we are forced to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves. We must face the consequences of our societal choices. We must ask ourselves, what kind of society allows such suffering to persist? What does it say about our values and priorities, and what is our role in creating a more just and humane system for all? The answers to these questions will shape the future of our justice systems and ultimately, our society. Defining toughest, a spectrum of severity. The term toughest prisons encompasses a range of institutions, each with its own unique set of challenges and brutalities. Some are notorious for their overcrowding, where inmates are crammed into spaces meant for a fraction of the population. Disease, violence, and despair run rampant in these environments, pushing human resilience to its limits. Other prisons are defined by their isolation. Inmates spend years, sometimes decades, in solitary confinement, deprived of human contact and meaningful interaction. The psychological toll of such isolation is immeasurable, often leading to severe mental deterioration. Still, others are known for their brutal regimes of physical and psychological torture. In these places, basic human rights are routinely violated, and the line between punishment and cruelty becomes terrifyingly blurred. Understanding the different forms of toughness is crucial to grasping the multifaceted nature of the problem. A day in hell. Routines and realities. The daily life of an inmate in one of these prisons is a relentless cycle of deprivation and despair. From the moment they wake up to the moment they fall into a restless sleep, they are trapped in a world that offers no respite. Days bleed into one another, marked by monotony and punctuated by moments of terror. The sameness of each day is broken only by the unpredictable bursts of violence or the rare, fleeting moments of human connection. In many of these institutions, basic necessities like food, water, and sanitation are scarce, and often withheld as a form of punishment. The lack of these essentials exacerbates the already dire conditions, making survival a daily struggle. Inmates are subjected to humiliating searches, constant surveillance, and arbitrary discipline. Every aspect of their lives is controlled and monitored, leaving them with little sense of privacy or dignity. The threat of violence, both from guards and fellow inmates, hangs heavy in the air. This pervasive sense of danger creates an environment where trust is scarce and fear is a constant companion. The world outside, with its freedoms and possibilities, seems a distant memory, a cruel reminder of what they have lost. The barred windows offer a glimpse of a life that feels unreachable, a stark contrast to their current reality. For many, the only solace is found in small acts of resistance, in whispers of hope shared with fellow inmates, in clinging to the remnants of their humanity. These small gestures become lifelines, offering a brief escape from the overwhelming darkness. But even these small glimmers of light cannot fully penetrate the darkness that pervades these places of despair. The weight of their circumstances is a constant burden, a reminder of the harsh realities they face every day. Scars of confinement's psychological impacts. The psychological impact of prolonged confinement in such brutal conditions is profound and often irreversible. Isolation, sensory deprivation, and lack of meaningful human contact take a devastating toll on the human psyche. Inmates struggle with depression, anxiety, paranoia, and suicidal thoughts. The constant threat of violence and abuse creates a pervasive sense of fear and mistrust, eroding any sense of safety or security. Many experience nightmares, flashbacks, and other symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder long after they have left the physical confines of prison. These psychological scars often follow inmates long after their release, hindering their ability to reintegrate into society and lead productive lives. The true cost of these institutions, therefore, extends far beyond their walls, impacting families, communities, and future generations. Section 5. Physical tolls, enduring the unendurable. The physical conditions in many of the world's toughest prisons are equally appalling. Overcrowding leads to the rapid spread of diseases, with inadequate medical care exacerbating the suffering. Malnutrition, dehydration, and lack of basic hygiene are commonplace, weakening inmates' immune systems and making them more susceptible to illness. In some prisons, torture is not just a threat but a terrifying reality. Inmates are subjected to beatings, electric shocks, and sexual abuse, leaving them with lasting physical and emotional scars. The lack of accountability for these abuses allows them to continue unchecked, perpetuating a cycle of violence and impunity. These physical and psychological traumas, often interwoven, paint a grim picture of the reality of life inside these institutions. They stand as a stark indictment of a system that prioritizes punishment over rehabilitation and dehumanizes those it seeks to control. Section 6. Global Comparisons, a Spectrum of Cruelty. While the term toughest prisons evokes a sense of universality, the reality is that prison conditions vary greatly across the globe. Each country has its own approach to incarceration, influenced by its unique cultural, political, and economic contexts. In some countries, the focus is on retribution, with prisons designed to inflict maximum suffering and break the human spirit. These facilities often feature overcrowded cells, inadequate medical care, and a lack of basic human rights. In others, there is a growing movement towards rehabilitation, with an emphasis on education, job training, and therapeutic programs aimed at helping inmates reintegrate into society. These progressive systems focus on treating inmates with dignity and providing them with the tools they need to succeed upon release. Comparing and contrasting these different approaches is crucial to understanding what works and what doesn't in the realm of criminal justice. By examining the outcomes of various systems, we can identify best practices and areas in need of reform. By studying successful models of prison reform, we can learn valuable lessons about how to create more humane and effective systems that prioritize rehabilitation over retribution. These models show that it is possible to reduce recidivism and improve public safety through compassionate and evidence-based approaches. Sharing best practices and advocating for change on a global scale is essential to creating a world where prisons are places of transformation, not torment. By working together, we can build a future where the criminal justice system upholds human dignity and fosters positive change. Section 7. Beyond the bars, the need for reform. The problems within the world's toughest prisons cannot be ignored or dismissed. They are a symptom of a larger societal illness, a reflection of our collective failure to address the root causes of crime and to offer meaningful pathways to redemption. Simply locking people away and throwing away the key does not make our communities safer. It only serves to perpetuate a cycle of violence and despair. We must demand better, for ourselves and for future generations. Real change requires a fundamental shift in our approach to criminal justice. We must move away from a system based on punishment and retribution towards one that prioritizes rehabilitation, restorative justice, and the reintegration of offenders into society. Section 8. A Call for Humanity, Our Collective Responsibility. The responsibility for addressing the horrors of the world's toughest prisons lies with each and every one of us. We cannot turn a blind eye to the suffering that occurs behind these walls. Silence is complicity. We must educate ourselves about the realities of prison life, challenge our own biases and prejudices, and advocate for systemic change. We can support organizations working to improve prison conditions, contact our elected officials to demand reform, and amplify the voices of those who have experienced the injustices of the system firsthand. Every voice raised against injustice, every act of compassion, every step towards reform brings us closer to a world where prisons are not places of despair, but beacons of hope and transformation. Section 9. Hope's Persistence, Envisioning a Better Future. The journey inside the world's toughest prisons is a harrowing one, filled with stories of suffering, despair, and the erosion of the human spirit. But even in the darkest of places, hope persists. It flickers in the eyes of inmates clinging to their humanity, in the tireless efforts of advocates fighting for change, and in the hearts of those who believe in the possibility of a better future. We must hold on to this hope, nurture it, and allow it to fuel our collective action. The path to reform will be long and arduous, but it is a journey we must take together. The fate of those imprisoned within these brutal systems, and indeed, the very soul of our humanity, depends on it.